we focus so much on building good products, good designs for users, that we forget to do the same, apply the same methodologies in all the other problems we have to solve. So we have this unique skill of abstracting complex information and visualizing them in an easy, understandable ways. That's our job, literally, right?
Right.
So we should use this skill internally. We should go to the stakeholders and understand, hey, what's the criteria which make you successful?
Hey everybody, welcome to UX Gorilla's Master Series. Our goal with this show is to help you gain new perspectives, tools, strategies and mindset for a successful career as a user experience designer. We are inviting some of the smartest experts from different industries around the world and learn about the path they took, the challenges they faced and the learnings they had to help you accelerate your own journey. Our next guest today is Markus Hofman. Originally from Germany, Markus is currently working in Singapore. His drive to understand the different businesses and create solutions is remarkable, and his impressive resume is a testimony of varied experiences he has gained throughout the course of his career. He has worked with agencies, organizations, and startups of all sizes around the globe. Currently working for the UX and research arm for Yara International, Markus is helping his organization create technology aimed at enabling millions of farmers to increase their yield and provide actionable knowledge. His passion to create relevant and accessible solutions for small farmers and making a difference has taken him around the world, from small farms in Africa to the rice fields of India. An avid traveler, Markus believes it is one of the best learning one can have and is a true exercise in empathy. Extremely willing to immerse himself in various cultures, Markus is deeply attuned to different cultures which reflect very well in his work. Markus is amongst one of those creative geniuses who understand that a good design is also about providing value to not just the end users but also to the business and all other stakeholders of the product. This is why his approach to getting buy-in for research and design is flexible and more holistic. Despite all the awesome work he has done and is doing, Markus is extremely humble and helpful. He is here with us today. Let's welcome him. Thank you so much for joining us, Markus. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for the very nice introduction. Doing very great. How about you?
I'm doing awesome and extremely psyched to get started. So, Markus, let's start with your current job role in Yara. What are you doing there?
Yeah, that might take a little bit to explain. So we are a company which has a very traditional, old-fashioned, you might say, business model, but the company wants to evolve into a knowledge company for farming and really wants to improve farming practices and knowledge all around the world. I specifically work in the smallholder farming space. So our unit is focused on millions of small farmers. They have 1 acre, 2 acres. They often only grow for themselves. And of course, they don't have access to latest knowledge, latest technology. They often don't even know what they don't know. So what we're trying to do is develop tools which can help them grow better, have more profit, so increase their livelihood in the end. And for that, we have a quite novel approach. So our team is not, we don't have a lot of agricultural experts in the team to start with, because we want to approach it from a different angle. We want to look at it from, hey, these are people. So what can we do for the people? If we take a step back and don't just focus on the agricultural practices, but how do we actually make a real impact on their livelihood? And yes, their livelihood to 80-90% depends on farming, so there will be a connection anyways, but we approach it from the people angle.
Oh, That's quite interesting. So, I believe the first time when we talked, you were just back from your trip in India. You were here with the farmers in rice paddy fields, right? So, you don't speak the language, and of course, it's very different. It's like the different side of the globe. So, how do
Yes.
you connect with them? Like, how do you establish that sort of rapport that they would open up to them? Because especially these topics are very sensitive. They are doing it for generations. Plus it's a matter of livelihood. Sometimes people also associate it with their pride. So how do
Yeah.
you establish that sort of rapport with them?
Yeah, that's a very good question because it's we did a lot of those research trips, and establishing this rapport is the most important part to actually get some valuable information out of them in the first place. And we follow the same principle wherever we went. So we went to China, I don't speak Chinese. We went to Thailand, we went to Kenya, to Tanzania, and we always had local contacts who speak the language. That's super important. But what's almost more important is that you have the local contact from that region who understands local practices, local cultures, local behaviors, what not to do. For example, one silly mistake I made in India was I was sitting there and I was crossing my legs, and then our local contact told us, no, you can't do that. Only the elderly are allowed to. And that's kind of, you create a bad impression. So this is not a language thing. You always need those, how do you behave? What are the topics we can talk about? How are the topics which we should keep for later once we have some trust? So that's one thing. Get up to speed with local customs. Have someone who helps you there. And then, of course, we also needed to have some knowledge so they trust us. So if we come there and we know nothing about farming, then it's a difficult conversation. That's kind of how we started out, because I didn't have farming background. But we quickly learned once we can actually give something, then you get more back. But in the end, it's really just be curious, be friendly. Like if they realize, hey, someone is sitting there who is really interested and asks a lot of questions and asks a lot of follow-up questions, that doesn't happen too often in their space, like it's farmers in quite remote areas. So if you show genuine interest, that's usually the best thing you can do. And then people will open up, because who doesn't like a nice conversation, right?
That's amazing. So if you can share with us any story, like through all these research trips that you've taken, something that's very interesting and you learned something new there. So could you share it with us?
Well, we learned a lot of things, a lot of cultural things, how people take in different countries. Like in some countries, it's more open. In some countries, people are really concerned of their impression they make. Like they want to project a picture of I'm a successful guy. Whereas in other countries, they're more open and say, hey, I know we're not that good, and you're from Germany. I'm sure your technology is amazing. Show me something. And then I'm a bit embarrassed because I'm not a farmer, right? I can't tell them about farming technology too much. It's those kind of things. And then like when we went to real rural areas, sometimes it's literally, oh, you're the first Western person I've ever seen. Please come to my house, have a tea with me, let's chat and tell me more. And super interesting conversations. All people were super friendly, super open. So whenever you go to someone, no matter which culture, and we might all have some prejudices about how different people in different cultures are, but once you have this genuine conversation, you always end up with super nice people, and you always have a good day and you learn something, even if it's not relevant for the project. Mostly we learned a lot of relevant stuff for the project, but you also learn kind of people and what do they do at home? How do they live? Those kind of things.
I think the first time we've also done a lot of ethnographic studies. So we used to do it at the time of our design school. And the first thing that, the first ethnographic study that we did, the first thing that our teacher told us that if you're going to a place with your mineral water bottle, they're never going to get you in. So eat what they are eating. If they are eating on the floor, sit with them. Wear clothes like them. So there were few people in our group who were like, there were couples, and they said that don't do this because it might be culturally inappropriate for them. So even if there might be few things which might be like, what the hell is this, these people are so backward, that might be your thought process, but for them you have to be just like them. You have to just mimic them so that they can be more open. So it's a very wonderful thing that you're saying, and actually there can be so many genuine conversations, and that was perhaps the best time of my life, like the first ethnographic study that I did. So I mean, I truly am on with you on that. So
if I can add to that, the very interesting thing about that part actually is that even that is different depending where you go. in some cultures, if you don't appear as someone who has a higher, who has some presence, or like who has some authority, that's the word, then they might not open up as much. Whereas in other cultures, it's exactly that. You have to be more level. So this is the important part, where you have to have the local contact who tells you all of those things.
That's amazing. So, obviously we are talking a lot about, this is essentially gaining empathy with your people, with your users. So this is gaining empathy outside the organization with the real users, with the end users. But I remember you telling me that it's equally important to gain empathy with people who are inside the organization, people who are building the product for you, people who are doing the sales, who are doing the marketing. So could you elaborate on that why do you think it's very important? And then what are the tools through which a designer can, gain that sort of empathy with the stakeholders inside the organization?
Yeah, I think this is actually the harder part of things, but it's equally important, because if you want to make a difference, and we try to build something useful for farmers here, so we try to make a real difference in the world. And that means A, we have to understand the farmers, but B, we also have to build it. If somehow internally we're not aligned, and we can't convince the company or people who are paying for it in the end it's the right thing to build, then it's not going to get built. And no matter how great our idea is, it doesn't impact the world because it's not getting out there. And I think this is actually the harder part, simply because it's often overlooked. You have a lot of assumptions that we should all be aligned, but organizations, of course, they think of bottom line, those kind of things. So you have to make a completely different argument. And in the end, sometimes it puzzles me, because we should use exactly the same process which we do when we do research outside and
Right.
users, which is all about, hey, what is your need? What is your pain point? What do you need to be successful, right? And it's internally exactly the same question. It's just we're in a different mind space, and we kind of forget that a lot. I'm guilty of that as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's super important to really understand who are the deciding votes in the organization, and what are their individual needs. How can you help them be successful? Then they will be helpful for you.
Right. That's amazing. So, in India especially, there are a lot of startups that are doing amazing work, and they do have designers in team now, thankfully. But there might be just one designer or two designers, right? So, in those scenarios where, of course, they are building a product which is important and which is cool, but they just have few resources. In that scenario, what do you think is the minimum research, or the bare minimum that they could do to ship faster, to reach to the market faster, and then get it validated, and then maybe scale up the team? So this is a question that get asked a lot. So I want to know what should be the approach or the process in these scenarios.
Yeah. So there's not one answer to that, if you ask me. It always depends on a lot of factors.
Right.
I'm coming from a startup background, where you basically have to ship quickly, because otherwise your budget, your money will run out. And I think this is generally a good approach. Don't overdo it. If you have the chance to test something, just test it instead of investigating and researching forever. At the same time, if you jump too quickly to conclusions, you will just go nowhere fast. So you have to find this happy medium. I think a good check for yourself, if you think you have done enough or not, is if you can very clearly formulate your problem statement. Like, what is the problem you want to solve? In the startup world, is the elevator pitch. So if you can very clearly formulate within 20 seconds, max 30 seconds, what is the thing you want to solve? And possibly roughly how you want to solve it, or in which direction you want to go. And you explained it to your grandma or someone who is completely out of the industry. It's nothing to do with it. And they instantly get it. Then you're at a very, very good point. And yeah, please move on and don't do more research, because you've figured it out. Once you're not there, you probably have to keep trying. The second thing is, I think we all have our favorite methods or favorite tools. And we sometimes forget to look broader. So you might focus a lot on qualitative research, where you talk with the individual users, but you might forget that you should also do competitive research or desk research. Just Google and find out about the market and those kind of things. So don't let those blind spots develop, which
That's true.
happens quite easily and quickly. So it's not so much about the amount you do, it's really have the right combination and the right set. And then the quick answer would be, this is a good ballpark figure. When you do qualitative research and you talk with people, usually you don't need more than literally a handful of people. Like the first 3 people, you learn a lot. With the fourth person, you already get duplicate answers. And with the 5th, even more so. And everything afterwards is just you hear the same stuff over and over again. So yeah, you really don't have to do too much to make your learning. Rather do that and then build one product iteration, do it again. You learn much more from that than initially speaking with 20 people.
That's interesting. Actually, I think with designers and especially the design researcher, there's an ego part inside which you want to satiate and you want to show that okay, we've done this much research. It's the perfectionist that keeps asking you to do it. But I think a very good check which you mentioned could be that the moment the repetitive answers keep coming, probably that's the time where you stop. So this is wonderful. The second thing I think that you said was moving more towards the testing approach. Instead of just doing the research, build something, get it tested, then have the feedback, then, again test it. So testing approach versus just talking and then building. So makes perfect.
Exactly.
Awesome. So, you over the time you have worked with startups, multiple organizations, and now you are at Yara. So during that time, if you had to hire, what were the skills that you used to look at? Like whenever you used to do hiring for UX researchers or UX designers, what were the essential skills? Not just the hardware skills, but otherwise as well. So what did you used to look at?
I think this is, I can give you a general answer, which is not even that specific to user experience. There's one key thing I always look at, which is this person asking smart questions? Wow. So and you can even test it, right? You say something which maybe doesn't make sense and you see, does he question it? Did the person realize, hey, hold on, what you just said doesn't make sense? And does he challenge me, right? Because this is exactly what you need in UX. You can't just take whatever you're given and then try to make something out of it. You always have to identify what are the real issues out there. You have to challenge assumptions. So for me, it's quite important to work with people with this mindset. So this is really the one key thing. Everything else can be learned, like using Sketch or whatever tools we're using. This is something you can learn relatively easily, and it changes all the time anyways. So the tools we're using today, we will not be using 2 years from now, most likely. But having this mindset, developing this mindset takes longer. So that's really important to me.
So how did you cultivate it in terms of, let's say this is one thing that you've said and it makes complete sense, that you have to ask good questions to get better answers, right? So how do you think one should cultivate that sort of mindset where they're asking right questions and then not getting biased while answering it? So what would you suggest? How should one do that?
That's a very good question, actually. I think it's all about, like, I often meet people who are, especially when they come from corporate backgrounds, they might be afraid of asking questions because there's a lot of pressure and a lot of expectations. And for some people, it might be seen as a weakness if you ask questions, right? Oh, I didn't understand that. Can you explain that again? You might look like the idiot in the room. But in reality, in most cases, most people didn't understand it. And they're actually quite thankful that somebody raised their hand and asked the question.
Right.
So it's really that. Don't be afraid of asking questions. Just do it. Be real. If you didn't understand something, try to figure it out. And if you're afraid to ask a question, then at least Google it or do something to figure it out. So I don't know why I'm like that, but I actually have always been curious my entire life, and it's quite fun to. Like, I'm that kind of guy, when I read one Wikipedia article, 1 hour later, I'm still sitting there and have clicked through 20 links. And for me, it's just curiosity, which I think is super important in this job.
Yeah, so 30 tabs at a time, that sort of person.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. So it's cool. It's cool to live like that. I think there is just so much information that you get if only you ask questions. So I was actually interviewing somebody day before yesterday, and they said the same thing. They said the one mistake that I see young designers making the most is that they don't ask enough questions, and we wish they do that. We wish they ask more questions. So that's about the skills. But let's say there are many portfolios, right? In terms of process, they look good. But how do you pick that? What do you think is the recipe of a perfect portfolio? Like, what is the
Yeah.
portfolio that stands out and you're like, okay, let's talk to this person. He seems or she seems like a good fit.
Of course, it depends on what kind of job you're hiring for. In our case, we have roles which are much more research heavy. So we look at people who have a good process, who have some research experience. In other cases, like the more common job out there is probably where you have an established product already and the focus is a bit more on usability and making those small steps and evolving the product. And then the portfolios might be a little bit different. But in general, I would say usually it's, again, we should apply the same principles on our portfolio, like when we design a product. Research who is that guy who's having an interview, what are they doing? Like when someone reads through portfolios, they probably have 30 or 50 applications per day and they have to go through them. So each application gets literally 10 seconds. And if then there's not anything there which catches the eye right away, then it's kind of out. Because especially in UX, you should be aware of that and build your portfolio around that, right? And if you didn't do that, then you're probably not the best UX designer because you failed your product right away and your product is your portfolio. I mean, that sounds a bit harsh, but it's the reality. When you're hiring or when people are hiring, they often have loads of portfolios on their desk every day. And then for me, it's really I think the process is quite important. So it's not so much about putting a lot of shiny screens on there, because UX is about way more than just screen design. Right. So I want to know what is the understanding of the person of the whole UX process, of all the steps involved and what are the different techniques. And I kind of want to see quick examples of how the person applies all those steps. I'm not so much interested about seeing screens in the first place.
That's true. That's amazing. I mean, again, it's just the outcome. There's no process behind it. So why did you use the color that you use? I think that makes more sense than just showing the shiny object. That's absolutely true. So extending this question further, in most of the meetups that I conduct, I come across many aspiring designers. They are not yet designers, or they are yet struggling with the idea of they want to make a career in UX, or they do not want to make a career in UX. So you mentioned that early on, like from a very young age, you discovered that you want to do design because you were very interested in how something aesthetically can look pleasing, and at the same time it solves a purpose. So you wanted to get inside of it, you wanted to know more about it, and then that's how you ended up in UX. But for many students or for many aspiring designers, they don't yet know what they want to do. So how do you think that process of figuring out should be? Like, what are the questions that they should ask? That is UX a career for me, or is UI a career for me, or is it something that I'm not made for? So what should the process be like?
That's a very tough question, I think. Because we change a lot over time, right? So it's hard to plan so far ahead. But that being said, I think there's, again, two answers to that. One is we have to be clear, UX is not about visual design. So this is kind of how I started. I had a very technical background. I was interested in Photoshop, and back then there was Corel Draw and those kind of things, and I just played around with it. And only later on, I realized, or a bit later, I realized, hey, there's much, much more to it. Right. And if you're aware of that much earlier, then you can target your career better. So it's probably closer to psychology than it is to anything else. Wow. And it's super exciting. Like, I love this part. If you're totally introvert and can't really speak with people, then it might be difficult at some point, right? Then you might rather look at a job which is more on the technical side, development, UI design, those kind of things. But in the end, it's basically down to what we discussed earlier. I think if you have curiosity, this is for me the most important prerequisite. And then, of course, you have to work hard to find the answers or find the right questions in the first place. And then it's also, it's not like when you choose the UX career, you will be stuck in it. It opens a lot of possibilities. That's true. You can move closer to tech, you can move closer to product, to business. because it's basically the interface between all those things. So it gives you a lot of possibilities if you approach it the right way, seeing it as a problem-solving discipline rather than a beauty and art discipline.
That's true. That's amazing. I mean, it's probably couldn't have answered it better. So it's amazing feedback. So let's say like, they have now made a career in UX, they're inside a company, they're all psyched up. So I'm taking us back to that conversation that we earlier had about, getting to know stakeholders. So many a times this is a very common scenario that there is a designer who, let's say, has come out of a design college or knows a lot of processes, and now they are very psyched and they want to get them inside their organization. But when they go to the stakeholders, or when they go to the C level, or when they go to their PMs, project managers, they are not very much encouraged. At least that's what they say, that people don't understand design, these people don't understand, and they get into this victim mindset, right?
Yes.
Instead of contributing, they get inside their head and they're like, okay, nobody's ever going to understand what design is. So for those people, like, for those designers who started from a point of view where they wanted to make a difference, and now they have come to a point where they are like, okay, nothing can be done, I'm just stuck here making just the beautiful shiny screens. What do you think they can do at their level to actually feel A, they are making a difference, and B, actually making a difference? So what would be your advice to them?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think a lot of us feel that. Again, I think it's back to we focus so much on building good products, good designs for users, that we forget to do the same, apply the same methodologies in all the other problems we have to solve. So we have this unique skill of abstracting complex information and visualizing them in an easy, understandable ways. That's our job, literally, right?
Right.
So we should use this skill internally. We should go to the stakeholders and understand, hey, what's the criteria which make you successful? Like, you probably, if I go to my manager and ask him, so what do you need to do to get a promotion? What is the thing you're getting valued, getting judged against, right? So how do you become successful? And once you know that, you can create a pitch and say, look, I have a solution for you, which will make you look good. And then you apply your design skills on that, right? You can put a nice presentation together. You just have to formulate it the right way. But it's really about that. It's not about, hey, I'm a designer, I'm important, please give me more responsibility. It's really about, look, I found a solution for your problem. How about we do this? And by the way, this is exactly what I want to do as a designer. But it's not about saying, hey, this is what I want to do. It's about, here's a solution for your problem.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, what you're saying essentially is that not just serve your users, serve people who you are, who are inside the organization. So basically, very trivial things, which might look very trivial to you, that, okay, the promotions or the job or the hike, but those can exactly be motivations for people who are, making those decisions. So, right. I mean, it makes absolute sense. So,
the
as
hard part is actually doing it. Because we work, like, we're in the same office all day, we interact with the same people all day, we kind of get into this, oh yeah, I know how it's going, and like I figured everything out and I don't have to do this effort anymore. And this is really the hard part, getting above that and really keep making this effort. And I'm guilty of that as well. Everyone is, because it's really not easy. Right. But it's hard. It's good to know and understand, and at least try practicing it every now and then.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. So, I'm right now, I'm also talking to a lot of aspiring designers, and I'm trying to understand from their perspective that if they had an opportunity to talk to experts like you, what are the questions that they would want to know? So I've taken some questions from them. So one very common question that I got asked was that there is someone who is a graphic designer, right? And now they want to make a switch to a career in UX. So what do you think, how should they make that transition? How do you think? And B is because, like, the problem essentially is that they have a good portfolio for graphic designing, but they do not have anything to show as a UX designer. So what should they do to build that portfolio, to make that smooth transition? So what would be your take on that?
It's a very good example, actually. I think a lot of us come from this career path.
Right.
if you want to make this transition, like UX is all about understanding a problem. That's 50%, or it's maybe even 80% of the job, and then finding a solution for the problem. So right now, this graphic designer is exactly in that spot where he has a problem, he wants to move to UX. So how do I find a solution?
Oh, wow.
So he doesn't have to have the answer for that to me, right? It's more about he has to show he's aware of that. And now he's researching. So how does the UX process work? What can I do? I can do research. I need to speak with people. And if he's showing me this effort, right, then he's already on the perfect path. So it's really do your research, see what UX is all about. There's amazing blogs, articles, books. Gain a basic understanding. Not about, you don't have to have the practical experience because that only comes over time. But do the research about what are the tools, what's the process, what are the things which seem important, what is different from graphic design and what is probably similar. And just make a plan. That's a perfect good starting point, because then you have a base for a discussion and people can give you advice on that.
Right.
So you don't have to be good at it yet, and you don't have to have a portfolio which shows that yet. But if you can have a portfolio which shows your thinking, your thought process, here are the next couple of steps I want to do, that will help you make the move.
So how can you find mentors who can give you a direction or who can guide you that or advise you? And these students normally they have good skills, but they are a bit lost. So how can they find the mentors, and where can they find them?
Is if you just want feedback on the work you're actually doing, you can literally ask everyone. You just have to be open to hear what they say.
Right.
Like not ask to hear an answer you want to have, but ask to hear when someone tells you, I don't understand that, this is shit. This is great feedback. Because then you know, okay, I need to work on it again, or I need to ask 2 more people in the first place. Yeah, regarding a mentor, I think it doesn't even need to be a UX mentor. It can be anyone, like just someone who has a lot more experience. Ideally, like there's various ways how you can focus your career. You can focus on a certain industry. You can focus on trying to be a generalist, or you can focus on a specific function. And then, like, if your focus is more on an industry, then just find industry experts, not designers.
Right.
If your focus is on a specific function, find people who might be clients of that function, who might be the hire managers who hire people in that function, those kind of things. Yeah, very high level and abstract. Sorry, can't really give a
this is a wonderful answer. So I think probably sometimes it's just a matter of sending them a LinkedIn message. But there's just one thing that, sometimes the LinkedIn profile, especially I stress this a lot, that make your profile that looks genuine, because people usually reply, but you should look like a real person. It should not look like a spam. So send messages. They might not reply you instantly, but most of the people reply. Like, I reached out to so many people. I still reach out to so many people, and most of them do reply. Like, let's say out of 10, if just one person is replying, that's enough for me to get started, right? So that's one. Second, of course, now there are so many meetups. It's just, stepping out of your comfort zone for a minute, just have that mind. And it comes very difficult. Like for me, I was a very self-critical person. I still struggle with it. But sometimes it's just getting out of your way. You don't have to feel that everybody's going to judge you. Probably 5 minutes later, even if you make a fool of yourself, 5 minutes later, they are going to forget it. So yeah, that helps actually. That's that's what I tell them, that just go and talk to people. That's true.
Yeah.
So
I think what also helps, that's a tip I got from a former CEO of mine who was a brilliant leader. He said, just think about what you can offer. Everyone has something to offer.
Right.
So if you want to have someone's time and you're an expert in graphic design or UX or whatever, right? Think about, hey, I can tell you something about the latest trends and this and that, but I would be very curious to hear from you about a different thing. How about we go for a 20-minute coffee or something? And a lot of people are actually, if it comes genuine, similar to what we talked about having conducting user research earlier, if it's just genuine interest, a lot of people are actually open to that because it's rare and it's interesting. So yeah.
So basically coming from a giving space, instead of just, taking, try to give value. Even if you are just starting out, there would be something that's
that you can offer. That's an amazing way to put it, actually.
And even if it
So
seems small for you, it might be quite interesting and valuable for the other person.
exactly. That's amazing. That's amazing. So, I was stalking you on Instagram actually, and you seem to have hit a very sweet spot between working on very cool projects and also have a life. Like, it's not that just work, it's life and work. And you even took a sabbatical. I think in 2-3 years back, you took a sabbatical. And do you think it helped you professionally? Personally, I'm sure it would have been a great learning, but how do you think it helped you professionally, and why would you recommend it?
I definitely would say yes, definitely helped me in every way. I think especially in UX, professional and personal is very close together because UX is about understanding people, and that also helps you in your professional life. It's not like this. I'm living in Singapore right now, so this work-life balance thing and this culture over here is quite hard because in Asia, especially Singapore, it's all about hard working.
Right.
But it's not easy. It takes effort to get enough time for doing that. But it's definitely valuable. Everyone should do it. You become, like for me personally, I got way more patient because when you're traveling, things go wrong all the time. You just
Right.
find solutions for unexpected problems, and you have to be relaxed about it. And that's really good. When you're traveling, you learn a lot about that. You become very open-minded. There's a lot of things which you take for granted, which like from how you were raised, from your culture, you just think this is how it is and it must be the same for everyone. But then you come to completely different cultures and you realize, oh, hold on, this is actually cultural. This is just what we do in our tradition, but other people see it completely differently. So you get some awareness of that a lot of things you might take for granted might be completely different somewhere else. And yeah, I think overall it just makes you a better person, and also like professionally, especially when you have interviews and people realize, hey, you're actually knowledgeable about different kinds of cultures and the world as a whole. This is a skill almost, which helps you in a lot of jobs.
It can even become a conversation starter or that icebreaker, where you can start from that point and then you establish a rapport. I think that's perfect. That makes perfect sense. So
I think the conversation starter, now that you mention it, it's a very good point. Like you have everyone is traveling to some degree and everyone has been somewhere. And I literally realized, I have been to a lot of places now. And whenever someone walks to a major city, I can they tell me about a place they went to and I have seen the place, I can talk about it. And the person is usually surprised because they think, hey, I have been probably the only one who traveled to Rio or something because it's so far away. But wow, this person has also been there and we can actually talk about it. And we both had fun, so you're also in a good mood. So it's those tiny little things which sometimes also make a bit of a difference there.
That's true. That's true. I think the first time that we talked, you were just back from India. And I think that was the point where we actually started because I really was so curious that, okay, this guy is from some different place. He has come here. I was just so curious that how would you have navigated through all this because it's just so much cultural difference. But I'm so glad, it feels good to actually see that people are actually taking UX as a way of life. I think it is what it is. Like, it's just not work, screens, inside this computer. It's so much outside beyond this part, you have to see those. So this makes absolute sense. So this is my last question to you actually. So if I have to ask you, what are the books that you would recommend any designer to read, or any resources that you think every designer should read? So what would be your pick?
So one book which I found super interesting was Don't Make Me Think. Even though it's not a whole UX book, it's really focused on usability. But like the principles which are discussed there apply for everything. And
that's true.
You can see like Apple, Google, all of them basically follow this principle. Don't have manuals, build your design, it's good enough and minimal enough so the user can instantly use it, those kind of things. So that's a really good book to read. And then a second book, which I found super interesting. It's not a UX or design book. It's more of a management book. It's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And in the end, it's about the challenge you have today will always be a different challenge than the one you had yesterday. So be aware of how much of your experience you can still apply and how much things you actually have to relearn or where you need new skills. And it's exactly the same in UX. The product you're building right now will be different from the product you built before. The users you're designing for are not you. So you can't really say, I think, like for me, this works best, so it should work best for everyone. It's often just not the case. What works for us might not work for the real users. So it's really about having this mindset and always being aware of it.
That's amazing. That's beautifully put. So, Markus, let's say if somebody is now listening to you and they want to reach out to you, so where can they reach out to you? How can they reach out?
Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way.
Okay.
I'm not very active on Twitter or anything, so LinkedIn is probably the best.
Okay. Thank you so much, Markus, for doing this. It was amazing to talk to you, to talk about your experiences. And I'm sure there is just so much more that anybody would learn out of it. I personally learned so many things. And it's always good to gain so much perspective from someone who is already doing it for some time. And the fact that you're still learning, that makes it still more interesting to us. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Actually, I have to thank you. You show exactly what UX designers should do. Get out there, ask questions, bring people together. I'm very much looking forward to see all the other episodes and learn from that as well. So I hope I could help a little bit. It was good fun talking with you, and I also learned quite a bit here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Markus.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this episode. We are extremely curious to know what is your biggest takeaway. Leave a comment below and let us know. This is a weekly show, so make sure you subscribe. If you liked it, please share it with your friends and teammates. Keep learning, keep growing, and I will see you next time.